that one that
Yeah.
and the fancy one.
Yes.
Maybe we're wrong, goes to other fancy
Yeah, but when you went to the theater,
O link agora,
Yeah.
já vem ter que entrar no YouTube e espiar aí alguém pode disparar para o disparar para a galera. Não sei. Todo dia aqui praticamente. E essa habilidade que você fez casa.
Eu acho que tu mudou.
Hi, Ronald, nice to meet you. Hi, Ronald.
Eu tinha. Você viu? Vamos comprar mais um.
Well, that's okay, I think that's cool. I'll give them all, and then I'll have to have a break. So you force, definitely force.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to try to already while you can stream by YouTube. Okay, you'll record it as well, right?
Yes.
Of course. Also, maybe go to if you want, I can also provide some information about your access to different channels.
The subscribe for some like some YouTube. It's got all the articles. You have to check.
Okay. So in case you need anything, right, I can go It's not really important for me to get some nice t-shirts.
It's here. This is Roddy.
Ronnie, nice to meet you.
Vienna was my undergrad student.
And now she's
also now she's going to Japan. She's
I'm going to Cuba.
okay. Okay, great. You eat Geomla? Yeah. You eat Geomla? Yeah. You eat Geomla?
I'm gonna do my master's from
And when will you go there?
I don't know.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
This is also your topic then? I think
Yeah, my undergraduate research wasn't related to that.
and sometimes to solve it.
Yes,
In this case, I definitely
Yeah.
It's kind of a scholarship or something.
Yeah, it's a scholarship granted by the Geomorphology. Selected by every country in Brazil.
Okay, so I have history.
Yeah, really excited. Already stayed in the year. Yeah. Having a lot to the
Yeah, but I kind of say, it's
Just it's more like
É o jeito que eu preparo para a pessoa poder. É porque é muito gente tomar. Para consumir mal,
I will try to stick to this but I think you're right.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the IPH Águas Abertas, Open Waters. Okay. So, the Águas Abertas is an initiative that was created in the past, maybe 5 years ago. And during the first years, we received a lot of professors and researchers that were working with topics related to the topics that we work in IPH. And maybe due to the COVID pandemic, the initiative passed by a hard time. And now we're trying to get back this initiative, Águas Abertas. And today we have here Professor Ronald from the University of Vienna, the Department of Geography and Regional Research. Yes, of course. Yeah. And in the last days, we spent some time with Professor Ronald Poppl. It was very nice. He has a great knowledge, great professor. Yeah. So it's a great honor for us to have you here and to have your lecture here. So thank you very much, first. And let's receive Professor Ronald Poppl.
Very nice introduction. Thanks for inviting me to be here. I'll go up there, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very nice place. Very friendly people. I'm really happy and really glad to be here. And when it comes to the topic of today's talk, we are dealing with connectivity in geomorphology, so different principles and different fundamental frameworks or conceptual frameworks of connectivity will be the core business of our today's talk. And also, besides looking towards different principles and different conceptual frameworks, I'm also going to showcase some applications, mainly coming from my working group, right? Some case study examples, mainly from Austria, but also from other parts of the world where we are working in. So I would like to introduce you a little bit to my small and nice working group, which is called HICON, which stands for Human Impact and Connectivity. And we are dealing with, mainly dealing with human impacts on the connectivity, so connectivity relationships in catchment systems when it comes to hydrological and also geomorphic processes in these systems. So the main questions are, how do humans alter water and sediment dynamics, mainly in fluvial systems? This is our core business, our core environment, if you wish. And what are the related effects? On the one hand side, on-site effects, and on the other hand side, off-site effects. We are also dealing with different kinds of feedback processes that are occurring in these systems and human landscape interactions. Also the human component, the social component, social systems are very much important to us, especially when it comes to management applications. So, and last but not least, we're dealing with the question of how can connectivity science be used to better understand these systems, the complexity of these systems, and to manage them in a sustainable way. So the management perspective is also very much important for us. So when it comes to the applied side of the coin, if you wish. So human impact, water and sediment connectivity, and to manage related consequences. And if you would like to visit our webpage, have a look at it. So I'm providing the link here, and you will get the slides after today's lecture. Okay, this will be provided to you as well. Okay, so when it comes to today's presentation or lecture, if you wish, I'm going to deal with these topics, and this is the structure of today's lecture. First of all, I'm going to shed light on some principles. So what is connectivity in principle? What are the different kinds of disciplines as well that are dealing with connectivity in science? Then we're going to have a look at different basic concepts, connectivity concepts in geomorphology. We are going to deal with some different geomorphic process domains and in how far connectivity, science, connectivity as such plays an important role in different geomorphic process domains. Glacial systems, fluvial systems, aeolian systems, and so forth. And then we are going to apply, I'm going to show you how we apply connectivity, science, concepts in water and sediment management, and then in the end, I'm going to do some advertisement when it comes to new and upcoming publications and events related to connectivity in geomorphology. So maybe it's also important to mention, in case you have any questions, maybe you don't understand what I'm saying, or if it's too specific or so just please raise your hand. You can ask questions whenever you think it's necessary, okay? Good, so as already mentioned, we're going to start out with a very general definition of connectivity, which forms the basis for most connectivity related disciplines. So a very general definition of connectivity is shown here, which is the efficiency of the transfer of materials between system components. And you can see this is very general kind of definition when it comes to connectivity, because it's not only geomorphology or kind of sediment-related disciplines that are dealing with connectivity. There are way more, and we are one of the first ones doing connectivity science. So, but when it comes to our discipline, hydrological connectivity is very much important to the transfer of water between different system components. And of course, when it comes to geomorphology and the development and dynamics of landforms, we're dealing with this sediment transfer, so sediment connectivity in geomorphology. And why do we use this concept of connectivity? Because it entails a range of benefits when it comes to investigate the complexity of geomorphic systems, also related to the spatial and temporal variability of material fluxes of any kind. Okay? When we are focusing on the interactions of system components, in how far they are interconnected, interrelated, connectivity science, is a nice platform and also a nice concept to deal with these interactions between these components. And very much also it's the core business of my own research in how far humans have an influence on these connectivity relationships and in how far humans are also connected to geomorphic systems. So you may have come across these different terms here. So one can differentiate between so-called structural connectivity, which stands for the spatial arrangement of sediment sources, transfer pathways, and sinks in geomorphic systems. If you think of a catchment as a geomorphic system, so this is the structural component. And second, there is this functional component when it comes to the processes themselves, when it comes to the dynamics of the system. So the interactions between these landscape compartments also very much related to the frequency magnitude relationships of geomorphic processes. And a very important statement, which is written here, connectivity, therefore, because it really means the propagation of different kinds of impacts through the systems, is a primary control upon the efficiency with which disturbance responses, so how the systems react on different kinds of disturbance, are mediated through these systems. You can do different, let's say, approaches when it comes to study connectivity, and a very new thing to do is to think of our geomorphic systems as networks, right? So it is a network consisting of different landscape compartments that can be linked or decoupled, or be decoupled from each other. So if you think of our system, so geomorphology, we have, for example, here a catchment system, and if you think this in a network context, you can differentiate, or let's say divide, a catchment into different compartments, right? So hill slopes, for example, sub-catchments, the channel network itself, and you can represent these entities of geomorphic systems in a network context, as shown here. So consisting of different nodes, right, that are linked to each other, and there are more important nodes that might act as so-called hubs, and these are very important, let's say, locations when it comes to manage these systems. Because if you look at certain locations that are very important when it comes to the mediation of disturbance responses to these systems, is a very important location when it comes to management, management applications. So neuralgic points, if you wish. But as already said before, connectivity also exists and existed before it did in geomorphology and other disciplines as well. In systems biology, for example, we have different kinds of entities, system components in systems biology that we do have in geomorphology, of course, or also in neurosciences and computational neurosciences. So we have, as nodes, for example, in neurosciences, individual neurons or cortical areas in the brain. And they also use connectivity science and especially network science to better understand the complexity of the systems that they are interested in. So neural networks, brains, also in ecology. So our connectivity approaches, right, our connectivity concepts in geomorphology are mainly based on those that were already presented in landscape ecology 30 years ago. Yeah? So in ecology, so we have different patches and different linkages between different habitats, yeah, that form the entities for ecological research questions, right? Or also, of course, in social network science, connectivity plays a major role when it comes to identify the linkages between different, let's say, entities of the society, groups of people, or cities, or whatsoever, okay? And last but not least, also connectivity science played a role, or also still plays a role, when it comes to a better understanding of pandemics. So epidemic dispersal studies, for example, also using these network-based approaches. So this is just to showcase that we didn't invent the wheel, right? In geomorphology, this was there already, so we picked it up, right? And adapted it, and also, of course, developed it further according to the needs of our own discipline, which is geomorphology. At least it's mine. I'm not sure if you're all geomorphologists here, I don't think so, but in any case, we're all kind of dealing with water and sediments and things that are just crossing our landscapes, okay? And I also would like to showcase the interdisciplinary character and importance of connectivity, because it very much, or can be at least, can at least work as a basis, yeah, a common basis, a common ground for different disciplines, and also to link these disciplines. So in an interdisciplinary context, connectivity provides a very nice framework. And if you're interested in, we are currently running a nice project which is called ICON, not HICON, it's ICON here, interdisciplinary connectivity. It's very nice because we have people from many different disciplines dealing with connectivity science. This is a so-called, I don't know if you know about these programs, an EU program, a so-called innovative training network with now 15 PhD students, and of course also PIs, related PIs, coming from different disciplines, computer science, also astrophysics, ecology, geomorphology, hydrology, neurosciences, systems biology, and also social science. This is very nice to be part of this because it really helps a lot, yeah? And you can gain a lot from the other disciplines in order to elaborate your own kind of thinking and your own discipline, to bring forward connectivity science in your own discipline. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit on some basic connectivity concepts in geomorphology. And first of all, I would like to talk about different spatial dimensions of connectivity when you look into fluvial systems, for example. And you may have heard them already, but still I'm going to repeat them for you. We can think of connectivity mainly in three different spatial dimensions in geomorphic systems. First of all, the longitudinal dimension, which is the transport of water and sediment within river channels, right? Second, we have this lateral component, this lateral spatial dimension, dealing with the input of water and sediment coming from the hill slopes and the floodplain areas to the channels, and the other way around, when you think of flooding processes, for example. And thirdly, the vertical component. So it's the exchange of water and sediment between the water bodies themselves, so river channels, and the groundwater body, for example. So which the things that are underneath the river channel. So also the bedrock. So this is this interchange and interrelationship between the water bodies, the bedrock layer, and also the groundwater layers. And of course, we have different factors of influence here. Climate, the very important influence, tectonics as well, and also, of course, different kinds of human impact. This is also nicely shown here. So we have water and sediment connectivity here in the middle of this figure, and with different factors of influence. So geology plays a very important role here. So if you think of different kinds of rock, right? That are more prone to erosion or less prone to erosion. Yeah, makes a huge difference if you have a basalt rock or if you have a sandstone, right? Here, when it comes to its erodibility, and therefore when it comes to also sediment transport across the landscapes. Different types of human activity. So dams, for example, yeah, have a huge influence on water and sediment connectivity as these features disrupt the transport of water and sediment. Or deforestation, yeah, different kinds of land use that occurs in the catchment areas. Soils, the soil property has a major influence on water and sediment fluxes across the landscapes. Geomorphology, yeah, so different landforms that might hinder or, let's say, even force water and sediments to cross our landscapes. Biota, for example, when it comes to vegetation, but also animals might have an influence on water and sediment connectivity, and climate as already mentioned before. Okay, just one picture to show sections of high and low connectivity in a catchment system. This is a picture taken from Nepal. I've been to Nepal in 2016 with 20-something students, and it's a perfect environment to study these things because you don't have a lot of vegetation around, so you can nicely see the landforms, right, and in how far they are coupled or connected to each other. So, and this is a very nice example along a river channel. So the name of the river doesn't really matter, I even can't remember it. It's a small tributary of the Gandaki River. So you have sections where hill slopes are directly coupled or connected to the channels, right? So you can see here. So if erosion takes place here in these upper parts of the hill slope, the sediments can easily reach the river channel because of the topography of the terrain. So with a location of high connectivity. And very close to this location, we also have circumstances or locations with low connectivity because we have a fluvial terrace here, decoupling the upper parts of the hill slope from the river channels. Just to show, okay, differences when it comes to natural connectivity, okay? And of course, when it comes to connectivity in geomorphic systems, the role of human impacts are very important to consider here. So humans to have a significant impact or to significantly influence these connectivity relationships in these systems. So this is an alpine environment, yeah, also coming from Austria, very much dealing with alpine landscapes, also some glaciers, snow and so on and so forth. So we have some lag effects when it comes to snowmelt and things like this. But anyways, just wanted to show you we have some problems, especially in settled areas with debris flows, for example, right, and flooding events. And we intentionally try to retain sediment in the hill slope parts or in the headwater systems in order to prevent these sediments to approach our settlements. So it's typical what we're doing in debris flow catchments. We build these check dams up here, yeah, intentionally decreasing connectivity along these torrential systems, right? So just to show, okay, we have also different kinds of other protection structures that might hinder or prevent sediments from being transported downstream. And we can also look at connectivity and investigate connectivity on different spatial scales, as shown here, using different methods, of course, because we have very different key processes acting in these different kinds of also spatial domains in catchment systems. So we can look at connectivity at a very small scale, aggregate or plot scale, measuring infiltration capacity of soils, for example. So if you're very interested in hill slope processes, when it comes to generation of runoff, it's very much important to have a look at the small scale. structures and differences in soil properties, for example. Yeah, we can go to the hill slope scale, so one level up if you wish, and do some plot experiments. We can go to the outlet of some headwater streams, for example. We can investigate connectivity on the sub-catchment scale, like in the Bayou catchment, where we've been to 2 days or 3 days ago, right? 2 days ago. Okay, so this is essentially what you guys are doing there, especially Bruno, doing his PhD. Okay, measuring water and sediment fluxes at sub-catchment scale. And then, of course, we can have a look at the whole catchment, yeah? And we have different ways to investigate these, and we need different technologies to investigate connectivity on these different spatial scales. And then, of course, if we are on the upper levels, we are more relying on remotely sensed data, for example. Okay, and this is a very nice concept, very well-known, famous concept when it comes to study connectivity in catchment systems. This is the so-called buffers, barriers, and blankets concept, developed by Kirsty Fries from Australia and others. Also, Gary Briley was on board. And what they are essentially looking at is if there are buffers, barriers, or blankets lying around in our landscapes that might hinder sediment fluxes between the different system compartments. So, and what they also do, and what they also consider in their concept, is the effective time scales when it comes to sediment transport, right? And effective catchment areas, relating it to the magnitude of the event. So, just to give a very simple example, if you have a very low magnitude event, rainfall, for example, so some parts might be coupled, yeah, might be connected, whereas others stay decoupled because there are a lot of barriers or buffers located in the system. A barrier would be, for example, a nick point in a channel, yeah, or a very wide valley section, yeah, with some barrier features in there. And the buffer would be a fluvial terrace, for example, right? And if you have a high magnitude event, rainstorm, yeah, the runoff might overcome these barriers and buffers, and the whole thing is connected in the end. So you're also considering the frequency, and here mainly the magnitude of the systems related to the connectivity of these systems. Questions? Okay, so as shown before, we can also look at these connectivity relationships on different spatial spatial scales. For example, showing here a nicely coupled section of the catchment where the slopes are directly coupled with the channels themselves. You have slope channel coupling, a high degree of slope channel connectivity, whereas in other parts you might have some terrace features or so on that might decouple these compartments. So this is also nicely shown in this rather old concept already. And it's not only the landforms themselves that might disrupt connectivity here, might also be related to different types of land cover, different types of vegetation. So this is an example showing in how far different types of riparian vegetation might have an influence on the lateral sediment input coming from the hill slopes, yeah, draining into a river channel, for example. This was my first paper, by the way. It was one of my PhD papers where I dealt with these lateral connectivity relationships and very much focusing on the role of different types of riparian vegetation. So now what I was discovering was, of course, the width of the riparian vegetation and the vegetation type plays a major influence, and of course has a major influence, and of course also to topography and the contributing areas in the catchments themselves. So, but what's also very nicely shown here is that riparian woodland vegetation, can retain a lot of sediment caused by the roots, right? So, and with this developing so-called root dams, it was nicely visible in one of our systems. So if you have a very dense riparian woodland vegetation, so-called root dams might develop. Okay, so just as a take-home message, the type of riparian vegetation plays a major role when it comes to lateral connectivity relationships. And of course, functional coupling. So coupling is not the same like connectivity. So coupling is more kind of a functional way to view things. So it's kind of in how far processes are coupled to each other. So this is a very nice example also coming from Nepal. So we have lateral erosion here. So we have slope undercutting, and therefore, of course, we initiate slumping processes, small also maybe even larger landsliding processes that might deliver a lot of sediment to the channel network. Okay, and then there is a lot of sediment in the channels themselves. So we have aggradation, yeah, and during the next event, this might have an influence on the lateral migration of the channel again. So this is kind of a ping pong thing going on between the hill slopes and the channels themselves. And it also plays a major role in which state the different compartments are. So in which hydrogeomorphic system state these compartments are. When it comes to the response of these compartments to different types of disturbances or external impacts. So, and this hydrogeomorphic system state is very much depending on the connectivity between these compartments. So this is a conceptual model which a nice colleague of mine, Tony Parsons, and I have been developing, showing different types of connectivity between different so-called geomorphic cells, as we call them. And this is very much important when it comes to disturbance. So these cells can act as sinks. Yeah? If you think of a landscape, right, you have some depressions there, can act as sediment sinks or even sinks when it comes to water storage, or they're in a steady state. Yeah? Meaning, yeah, we have these sinks that are full with water, but not overtopping, not overswimming, for example. If we think of these depressions when we're kind of sinkhole kind of features, we had a look at the biocatchment. Yeah? And if they are overspilling, right, then they act as water and sediment sources. And this has a huge influence, of course, on the overall response of these catchments to different types of influence. So also when it comes to human disturbances. So this is a conceptual model that I presented or developed some years ago. Let's say relating connectivity to the sensitivity of this system. So the more connected the compartments are, the higher the degree of connectivity, the more sensitive these systems are to external influences, which makes sense. If you have a high degree of coupling, right? If something happens, these pulses are mediated through the system. If you have a decoupled situation, you have influence somewhere, this might not be propagated across the whole system. So, so it's a measure, for example, let's say a measure, connectivity is a measure for the sensitivity of the system. And of course, changing over time. So the systems are self-regulatory. So if you think of a catchment, right, which was deforested, so no forests there anymore, this is very highly connected, this system, right, when it comes to water and sediment transfer. But over time, if you leave the system alone, you have natural reforestation, so in terms of succession, vegetation development, and this is related to a self-regulatory system process that has a huge influence on the connectivity. So it's changing over time due to different factors, but but also self-regulation plays a major role. So I showed you some different types of at least I mentioned different types of human influences. What different types of human influences could we think of? Maybe you have an idea. So which different kinds of human activities, either in the channels or in the catchment areas, do influence connectivity? So hands up and shout out loud what you were thinking. Professor, please.
Them in the rivers.
Exactly. Dams in the rivers. We already talked about that. What else? Maybe it's too easy. Yes, please.
Deforestation.
Deforestation.
Agriculture activities.
Exactly. Different kinds of land management. What else?
Woods.
Sorry?
Woods.
Yeah, wood. Yeah, for example, logging. Yeah, plays a major role here. What else when it comes to the channels could you think of? Not only dams, but other engineering structures. When you look into your urban rivers here in Puerto Rico.
Impermeabilization.
Sorry?
What is it?
Urbanization.
Impermeabilization.
The margins.
The margins, yeah, the embankments, okay, channelization, yeah, plays a major role. And I also saw in your rivers there, I can't remember the name of the river. Diluvio, yeah, excavation works. So really direct kinds of influences, yeah, when it comes to sediment addition or sediment removal out of this system. So different sorts of impacts, which can be thought of random or pulse type of impulses, right? So there's pulse type of impulses, so it's one impact, right? And then the impact is over, more or less. And then we have random kind of impacts, like shown here. So this pulsed ones like deforestation, and there is system recovery. And if you have rent types or kinds of influences or impacts, like the installation of a dam, for example, it stays there until the dam is being removed, or until it is breached, or until more or less the whole thing is silted up. Okay? So this is just some conceptual considerations when it comes to think of these interrelationships, also between sensitivity, connectivity, feedback processes, and system recovery. And last but not least, and Masato will love me for this, right? So we also have to think about the connectivity between geomorphic systems and social systems. Yeah? And you call it socio-geomorphology? Yeah, okay, or you do. Yeah, right. So I named it human geomorphic connectivity because, yeah, the connectivity science forms the basis for this consideration. So the geomorphic systems and the social systems, so you have different kinds of disturbances, right? Either coming from the geomorphic system, disturbing the social system, when you think of different kinds of natural hazards, yeah, flooding, yeah, debris flows, and so on and so forth. And the social system needs to react to this in terms of installing check dams, embankment dams, or whatsoever, right? And this, again, has an influence on the geomorphic system. So maybe creating flooded areas somewhere more downstream, right? And then, again, the social system is affected. So this kind of a ping-pong thing related to human geomorphic connectivity. Yeah. And of course, sorry, please, Ronald. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
You told us that the ping pong, so I want to do the ping pong as a question. Okay.
Mhm.
You asked to her why she is using the social geomorphology approach.
Mhm.
And I'm very curious to know why didn't you use in terms of the human geomorphic connectivity? You didn't think geographic connectivity. You didn't think?
Yes, I think so. In my perception, at least, so as I'm a geographer, for me, this is geography.
Yeah.
Because humans
Yeah.
in geography and also in geomorphology, in our system, geomorphology is part of geography, right? So in the US it might be different, yeah? But always has to do, or has to have something to do with humans. Geography deal with these interactions and interrelationships. So this is geography, for me at least. But now, of course, in this conceptual model, we're dealing with geomorphic systems. So a human landscape or human environmental relationships or interactions are the core business of geography. Okay. Yeah, these are very important considerations when it comes to manage these systems, right? Managing connectivity in geomorphic systems. So we have external and internal pressures. They can be anthropogenic, like as already shown before, or also natural ones, yeah? High magnitude events, or earthquakes, or different types of events, or natural hazards, or whatever you may call it, that might have an influence on the dynamics of the system. So we mainly dealt in this paper with fluvial systems, causing for some geomorphic responses. And this is very much important when it comes to manage these systems, managing for place and also context-based conservation recovery potential in catchment systems, and also the consideration of these ways of thinking in catchment or river management and action plans. Okay? Okay, so the next part of my lecture, I'm going to deal a little bit with connectivity in different process domains. Process domains meaning different types of geomorphic processes and different geomorphic agents that might play a role in this. Starting with hill slope processes, and soil erosion, of course, is a very important issue there. Okay, so you have a direct relationship between the sediment yield, yeah, coming or being delivered or stemming from soil erosion processes, and land use, and of course some climate parameters. In this specific case, of course, we're dealing with the amount of water in the system. So you have a very nice relationship between these different factors. And this has a direct kind of connection to the connectivity. So the more water in the system, the more erosion, the higher the degree of connectivity, at least on the hill slope scale. Yeah? And the question that arises, and this is of course very important for all of us, how do these systems change in the future when you think of climate change issues, right? So what about the changes in the connectivity relationships in these systems, and how to manage these systems in an effective but also sustainable way, okay? And you can play around with a lot of models in different spatial scales. So this is a global soil erosion model, dealing with different so-called RCPs, so representative concentration scenarios when it comes to CO2 emissions. And you can see a direct relationship, of course, between, let's say, global warming and climate change and the global patterns of soil erosion. Yeah? This is very much related to hill slope connectivity in a hill slope process domain in geomorphology. And not only the climate change plays a major role in here, but also the land use change. So we have to adapt to climate changes when it comes to land management and land use. So we'll have some desertifications, and we have to adapt our land use automatically in order to provide food to feed our population, right? So there's a huge change also in land use that is triggered or influenced by changes in the climate. Again, you have these different RCPs. So the worst scenario, everything goes down the drain more or less, right? Also when it comes to sediment loss and different other scenarios. So direct linkage between climate change and connectivity and sediment yields. Of course, soil erosion is not the only process that occurs on our hill slope systems, so it's also landsliding processes. You know, different types of landslides. For example, here are some shallow landslides blocking a river in China, and this has a really significant effect on the longitudinal connectivity of these rivers. And also when it comes to natural hazards, think of dam breach scenarios and think of flash floods that might follow these dam breaches. Also another example, again coming from Poppl, yeah, it's a very nice, again I can tell you it's a very nice place to study these things, because this last vegetation is just not there in most of the times. And again, there's a linkage between and a relationship between the occurrence of landslides and climate change. So according to IPCC, for example, we have more and more high magnitude events in the future, right? More extreme events, and therefore also more different geomorphic hazards that come with it. Yeah? And this is a very nice study by Italian colleagues published in 2018 showing the relationship between different RCPs, yeah? RCP scenarios and the occurrence of landslides, yeah? Which is not everywhere the same, right? So because climate change is different or will be different according to different simulations in different parts of the world. Yeah? We have differences here, but still you can see the overall trend here with an increase of landsliding processes. When we look into the river channels themselves, we already dealt with dams, we talked about it, and still I wanted to highlight the importance of dams when it comes to sediment delivery, yeah, also to the oceans, for example. So overall, if you think of the increase of population worldwide, we have way more sediment input to the channels, yeah, than we had before the Anthropocene. Let's put it like this, at least before humans had this kind of significant influence in terms of land cover change, in terms of land use change. So we had here, this is a figure showing some numbers. It's based on data of 270 global rivers, very nicely showing these relationships. So we have, without dams, we would have way more sediments in our rivers. But with dams, yeah, with trapping in large, but also in small reservoirs, we have even less, yeah, sediments approaching our oceans. Although in total there's way more sediment load in the rivers. So this is the overall statement here. And this can also be budgeted very nicely. This is just a study by Young and others showing, this is a 3 gorges dam example, the sediment budget before the closure of the last huge dam here, 2002. And you have these numbers here when it comes to sediment loads in the river channels, right? And then you have the post 3 gorges dam construction period with a huge decline of sediment loads and sediment yields, of course, related to the installation of the dams. And this has, of course, major implications also for our coastal ecosystems. And I'll show it to you a little bit later on. And dam removal has the opposite effect. So I played a little bit around with some models here. This is a so-called Caesar-Lisford model, which Marina is also using in her thesis, right? And this is a river section. It's kind of an experimental study where we had multiple dams in a very small system, as you can see here. The whole thing, the whole catchment area has a size of around about 20 kilometers square. And in total, we had 14 dams there in the past, mainly created for fish farming purposes, but it doesn't really matter in the end. I just wanted to show you what happens to the sediment delivery at the outlet of this channel reach after dam construction, right? The first dam was constructed ages ago in the 15th century, and you can see here, due to the infilling of these dams, yeah, more and more fine sediments were able to pass through these dams. And then there were some dam removals And you can see these nice sediment peaks because the sediments that were stored behind these dams were immediately entrained, yeah, eroded after the dam removal. And this has major implications, of course, for the downstream parts of the catchments when it comes to sediment management. Yeah, so dam removal also has a major influence. And of course, discharge in the rivers themselves, relating to climate change, more high precipitation events, so we have more these kind of peaky hydrographs, yeah? An increase in connectivity. But also in aeolian systems, right? Yeah, or aeolian processes, the aeolian process domain. We have different factors that are kind of very directly affected by changes in the climate. Climate variability having an effect on the vegetation patterns in the system and having a really very pronounced effect on aeolian connectivity, yeah, for example. So really changing a lot the roughness, the surface roughness, and therefore, of course, the degradation and desertification of semi-arid and, of course, arid environments. So wind erosion, yeah, having climate change has an important effect on the connectivity. Yes, the same here, climatic aridification having a direct effect on the vegetation cover and on the transport pathways for sediments when it comes to wind erosion. You can also nicely model wind erosion here using different models. It's not straightforward, but at least you get very nice and colorful pictures in the end and you can show it to the people, right? But the direct effect can be shown here, climate change on wind erosion. This is a study coming from China because they have a lot to do with desertification, wind erosion, especially in the less areas. Yes, and also glacial processes, yeah, glacial melting, yeah, an increase in hydrological connectivity, increase of sediment delivery to the fluvial systems, or let's say to different systems surrounding the glacial system. So very direct kind of relationship that can be shown here. But also when it comes to the movement of glaciers, right? So global warming has a direct impact on the movement rates, on the velocity of glaciers. This is a very nice study showing the effects of global warming on the ice speed velocity. Is shown here in the marine bird land part of Antarctica. Yeah? And yet you can really nicely see a vast increase in the velocity of the ice movement here. And of course, an increase in connectivity. Or same here, glaciers that deliver a lot of water and sediment to the river channels, or the systems that are surrounding these glacial systems. So for me, very important, yeah, alpine guy, yeah, because Austria is yeah, I think 70-something% of Austria consists of the Alps. So we are, of course, very concerned about this development. So we have glacial meltdown, yeah, and there's a lot of loose sediment lying around in the pro-glacial areas, ready to be transported, to be moved downstream when it comes to different natural hazards. We think of debris flows and so on and so forth. Or even the development of glacial outburst floods, if we have some glacial, pro-glacial or supraglacial lakes, for example. Okay? And there's a nice study by Stuart Lane and others showing very nicely the relationship between the increasing area, pro-glacial area, and the supply capacity ratio and the sediment delivery in the downstream regions. Okay, so I need to speed up a little bit, I think. And when we have a look at the last process domain here, periglacial processes, yeah? Periglacial processes, this is the areas that are governed by ice lenses, permafrost processes. And a very interesting feature that might also become a potential hazard for humans are rock glaciers. It's just accumulations of rock filled with ice, but it's not a glacier, it's a periglacial system. So because the ice develops there, right, also without the existence of glaciers. And these features are also moving, right? And we have also nice studies showing the relationship between climate warming, increase of temperature and anomalies, and the movement rates of these rock glaciers. And coastal processes. So I lied to you, I'm sorry, I forgot about the coastal processes. The periglacial ones were not the last ones. Climate change and coastal processes, which is really straightforward. So we have sea level rises, and therefore, not at all locations, yeah, but in many locations, this is just a map of Europe, showing the coastal erosion related to climate change, so sea level rise. So with erosion, we have some stable parts, but especially in Northern Europe, because we have these rather steep, cliffy kind of coastlines, we have to deal a lot with coastal erosion. And also here in delta systems, so these delta systems are very much influenced and governed, of course, by the sediment supply coming from the continents, right? And these are very complex systems, and also connectivity science, we hope at least, helps a lot to better understand the complexity of the systems, because you have to understand the fluvial processes, you have to consider marine processes, and it gets very complicated and messy if these two process types interact, okay? Anyways, but this connectivity has an important influence, and the sediment delivery has an important influence on the development of our coastlines. So if the sediments are missing, yeah, and not approaching our oceans anymore, we have to deal with way more coastal erosion, yeah, because these sediments in these delta areas, they act as buffers, yeah, for the waves to approach the coastline. If they are completely missing because the sediments are retained by the dams and not approaching the oceans anymore, we have to deal with even more coastal erosion than we would have to deal with anyways because the sea level rise. Okay? But the good news is we can also remove our dams. This is a very nice study coming from the US, the mouth of the Elba River, where in the US it's really popular right now to remove a lot of dams because they came into age, yeah, they silted up, and also due to different environmental concerns. And this is a picture showing the mouth, it's the delta of the Elba River in 2010, and after the removal of the Elba Dam. And you could nicely see the sediments, yeah, approaching the ocean. There's a lot of legacy sediment that was stored behind these dams. I'm not sure about the quality of these sediments, right? But still, yeah, you can nicely see the influence of dams, and then in the end, kind of a system recovery caused by the dam removal. So in the last part of my lecture, I would like to show you some examples from Austria, where we are using, from my working group, coming from my working group, where we are applying connectivity science in water and sediment dynamics and water and sediment management. This is Austria, lies in the heart of Europe, let's put it like this. And this is not in the Alpine part of Austria. So the Alps will be somewhere here, and the northern part, the eastern part of Austria is not Alpine. It's some hilly terrain, it's the Bohemian Massif, mid-mountainous area. You can see this is a catchment close to the Czech border. This is the Czech Republic. Who knows the Czech Republic? Okay, yeah, who was there? Marina was there. Anyways, so it's a national park down here in the lower reaches of the so-called Fuglitz River, and this is just a land cover map showing the current land use and land cover conditions in these systems. And we have a lot of arable land, and we have a lot of soil erosion there because it's not really flat; it's rather hilly, right? And therefore, we have a lot of soil erosion and a lot of fine sediment input to the river. And the river, as already mentioned, is located in the national park and drains into another river, and this is the core section of the national park down here. And as you can imagine, the national park is not really happy about this situation because this is not high quality sediment. Yeah? It's sediment coming from the arable areas containing a lot of fertilizers, even maybe pesticides and whatsoever, what comes with it, right? So, and the national park, of course, wants to reduce the amount of sediment input to the channel network. This is really the core section of the national park. It's a very nice, incised meander and a very old kind of mid-mountain region in Austria and in the Czech Republic. It's the Tie or the Thaya River. Doesn't really matter. So, but the national park asked us if we could have a look at these problems and find ways to localize hotspots of soil erosion and hotspots of sediment input to the river network. And of course, connectivity is the way to go here. But also, before we did that, we had to have a look at the quality, the current state of the system when it comes to sediment quality. And for this, and that's why it's also, for me at least, very important to collaborate with other disciplines, people, scientists from other disciplines. We can make use of information, different ways to investigate or evaluate the system state, also coming from other disciplines. In this specific case, we are freshwater biologists, right? So we can use some indicator organisms showing us or telling us something about the quality of the water in different sections of the river. Indicator organisms in this specific case were so-called macroinvertebrates, larvae of different kinds of insects and so on and so forth. So some larvae we can deal with bad water quality, but others don't. So, and depending on the occurrence of these different species there, you can directly infer the water quality. It's a so-called saprobic index, which can be calculated based on the organisms that can be found in these river sections. And you can see here, this is the whole river of the main river, the Fuglitz River, from the upper parts of the headwater areas down to the outlet in the national park. You can nicely see here there's some patches with very low water quality, bad water quality. The higher the index, the worse the water quality is. And we have a direct relationship between natural sediment input and water quality. So this was the first step, so very clear downstream deterioration trend. And what we did was to identify locations of soil erosion, hotspots in the catchment area, and in how far they are connected or not connected with the channels. Because when it comes to manage these systems, it's very much important to know where to put the management measures. And it's, of course, more important to focus on these areas that are directly connected than on the others that might be kind of disconnected from the system. So we can do it with different tools. For example, modeling. This is the so-called GeoWebC connectivity model. It's the GeoWeb model is a soil erosion model, and we adapted it a little bit with the developer and added some connectivity component. It's a process-based model. because we talked about physically based and process-based model, very nicely showing the connectivity between different parts of the catchment and the river channels, depending, of course, on the processes. And this is very much important because many approaches that are on the market, also the IC, are not really process-based. They are more static representations. So, and we were aiming to get more dynamic process-based information on these relationships. So we were able to identify locations of high soil erosion rates coming from the GeoWeb model, and we also mapped these connections between these hill slope parts with high erosion rates and the channel network. So we came up with or a heat map or focus map when it comes to management issues. So what we did also in the field was, of course, to map the connectivity between the hill slopes, or let's say the catchment areas, and the channel network. It's very important to do so because field work is essential when it comes to these things. There are a lot of artifacts in the DTMs or whatsoever you might use for the modeling exercises. So this is a very important statement. Please go to the field. Always verify your model-based observations. And then different management strategies come into play. We can do on-site management, soil erosion control, for example, soil surface protection, mulching, for example, or off-site responses. So off-site effects can be nicely managed. So the on-site management actions are taking place where the actual problem takes place, so soil erosion. The off-site management takes place where the connection, the connecting, the neuralgic points are located. So to mitigate and manage the water-mediated soil export from the fields to the river channel networks. And there are different ways to do that. And of course, we want to do it in a sustainable way. The way to go are the so-called natural water retention measures, which are, for example, in the riparian zone, the floodplains, to develop or to maintain riparian buffer or filter strips, for example, floodplain restoration and management, to retain water and sediment in the landscape before it enters the channel network. There are also in-stream options available, bed and bank renaturalization and stabilization measures. So the more natural, the more structured a channel is, the more or the higher the potential to retain water and sediment in the channels before they get flushed through and might reach some areas where it even gets more problematic to deal with these things. Yeah, this was a study that we did on the efficiency and the buffer, the sedimentary retention capacity, trapping efficiency of riparian buffer strips. You can nicely see it even in the picture. The width of the buffer strip, but also, of course, the type of vegetation has a major influence on the water and sediment retention capacity. And of course, also the characteristics of the contributing area played a major role here. This is a work which is done by one of my PhD students. This is John Perez, and he's using a network approach to deal with these things. And also to compute different scenarios in the modeling environment of different types of natural water retention measures. Process-based modeling, Masato, and using different kinds of connectivity metrics. Field observations in order to get input data for the model. Field work is important. You have DMs, you have soil erosion modeling, then the end network analysis, right? And you can compute different types of network metrics. This is quite new. This is really, something new that we're currently trying to develop. Network-based approaches in order to better understand what's going on in our systems. There's some partial results. He presented it at the EGU this year, European Geosciences Union General Assembly, huge conference, takes place in Vienna each year. This year, I think we had 12,000 abstracts or something, and a lot of people from Brazil came to the EGU to Vienna. And he simulated different scenarios for different management options. Hedges, building of terraces, mulching, contour plowing, and different things. And you can see these effects here in the sediment fluxes, but also in the discharge modeled in the rivers. And this is just some representations. Here's the total discharge for different scenarios, some buffer strips, some kind of disconnecting features, and this is the river here. Yeah, this is the whole hill slope for which he did it, and also different other management options, terraces, disrupting these water and sediment fluxes from the erosion-prone steeper parts and the river channels, but also contour plowing plays a major role in there. This is also represented in the sediment transport, of course, and this is the new stuff here, based on network science, calculating different indices, connectivity indices based on the network structure, so-called betweenness centrality, the number of shortest paths passing through a specific node. Think back on one of our first slides where we said, okay, these systems can be represented as networks consisting of different nodes and linkages. And this is also very much important when it comes to management. Okay, you have some high degree of betweenness centrality here. So this is the place to go to when it comes to managing these systems. National park, another national park in Austria, the Danube National Park. We can also try it in ecological studies or eco-geomorphological studies. Different types of indices, just to show you another place in Austria, also not in the Alps here in the Danube system. I think I have to speed up. There's the case study topological analysis. So what's essentially being done there is they reconnected a side arm to the main channel in order to increase the connectivity in the system, and in order to get a better condition for the overall system state, ecological system state. So this is a floodplain national park close to Vienna. So they did some topological analysis, also showing the effects of the side-arm reconnection on the overall connectivity of the system. And this has a main important implications for freshwater ecology. Okay, I will speed up, just showing another example from another part of the world, in New Zealand. We did, not myself, but some colleagues of mine, and we published them together in Systems of New Zealand. New Zealand, you might know, since the European settlement in New Zealand, there were a huge land cover change, deforestation, which led to a lot of problems when it comes to sediment related processes along the hill slopes. You can see here deforested areas, a lot of erosion, a lot of sediments that are being or still entering the channel networks. You can see here, this is this so-called Poppl river before the land cover conversions, and hereafter. You see huge aggregation in this system. You have really, really big problems with loads and loads of sediments in the systems. In here, gully complexes, deforested area, huge gully systems that were developing, transporting loads and loads of sediments to the river. Also, in this specific case, it's very much important to have a look at the connectivity relationships. This can be nicely done also by different kinds of mapping applications and so on and so forth. And you can, of course, also think of different management options. To close the forest canopy, and also to install or grow fast-growing shrubs and willows, for example, in order to stabilize the channels. In river strategies, riparian buffers, very much important. Dewatering of the hill slopes, when it comes to landsliding processes. Also in Italy, we did a lot of things. One of my master students had a look at sort of in an alpine environment, looking at connectivity in the so-called Fella catchment in Italy, in the alpine part of Italy, and this is very much think back on the buffers, barriers, and blankets approach, showing and mapping different types of buffer and barrier features in the system, applying the very well-known IC, Index of Connectivity, and the ECA approach, which we already talked about, the approach of the affected catchment areas, and having a look at the interrelationships, right? And what's really nice, and this is also very much important, maybe also, also that important, like going to the field, what's related to fieldwork, is to have dice inventories, right? This is debris flow areas of this Fella catchment, and what we did there was to see if there's a correlation between the IC, the index of connectivity, and the actual debris flow occurrence in the system. I would say so-so. The problem is that the IC is not really representing the processes themselves. And we have also some cascading effects, and then I'll most likely leave it with it. This is how a typical valley in the Austrian Alps looks like, but not really typical, because this catchment was hit by a huge rainstorm back in 2010. And you can see here that the whole valley was covered with different debris cones, different types of processes that occurred. They're triggering a lot of landslides, shallow landslides, but mainly debris flows, also blocking some parts of the river. So these are some blocked parts of the river, as you can see here. Some landslide dams that occurred here. And then one of these lakes or these dams bursted, right? And we had a huge flash flood going downstream. Yeah, and you can see how the floodplain areas look like. This is the former retention area, the ponding area. Loads and loads of sediments still stored there in the systems, ready for being entrained. And you can see here the consequences of these flash flood events with these flood marks and so on and so forth. So this is very close, so some huts very close to a debris flow deposit. And yeah, we did some work also on wood in streams. This is currently under review, so I hope that this will get published soon, let's put it like this. And of course, just wanted to show you that also wood in rivers has a major influence on sediment and water connectivity there. So this is ongoing work. So now, I'll come to an end. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer than I originally expected to take, but anyways, I'm sorry for this. Please allow me to announce some things when it comes to new and upcoming publications. So there is a special issue in connectivity, which has been finalized on this connectivity in hydrogeomorphic systems, emerging concepts and their applications. Very nice studies published there in the ESP&L. And let's say the introduction paper was published this March. Here, if you want to look it up, please do so. It might be of interest to you. And this I would really like to highlight here. This is now taking already 3 years. We are producing a book publication on connectivity in geomorphology from Cambridge University Press, where we tried to have a look at connectivity from different process domains. You can see here, of course, introduction, connectivity concepts, blah, blah, blah. But then having shedding light on different connectivity process domains, hill slope, fluvial, aerial, glacial processes, periglacial, coasts and deltas with very, very great researchers. We could win for this publication. And then the methods part of the book, yeah, quantifying connectivity in geomorphology, related to measuring, index-related approaches and modeling approaches, and then last but not least, managing connectivity in different environments, agricultural land, rivers and wetland systems, drylands, coasts and deltas. So this is currently in press, so this will hopefully be published late summer this year. Okay, and in case you might have some interesting papers for us, there are two calls still open. One geomorphology, the other one in frontiers in water. One is on the effects of large wood on water and sediment connectivity in fluvial systems, so the large wood kind of perspective here. And we have some contributions from Brazil, right? At least, yeah, okay. And we have the second one, investigating connectivity to advanced and predictive understanding of watershed processes and the Earth's critical zone. In case you have some very nice, high quality material, submit it. Please let me know. And nice conference, and I think also Ronald and Marina applied for a grant to go there. Will take place not in southeastern Brazil, where there are also nice balloons flying around, right? This is in Cappadocia in Turkey, a regional conference organized by the IAG, the International Association of Geomorphology. So that's it, and I'm sorry for that it took a little bit longer than originally announced. Sorry, thanks.
Thank you, Professor Ronald, for a great presentation. Now we have some time for some questions, maybe 10 minutes of questions and comments. Yeah. And if you want to do some question in Portuguese, no problem. We can translate that. Bruno will conduct this session. So, okay. So let's open for the, let's do some questions and comments. Okay, please.
Yeah, you the first one. Just great, yes. So, Ronnie, nice presentation. Thank you for your lecture. Really nice. I would like to know your personal opinion about quantified connectivity. What do you think about this? More connectivity is more approach or a thinking, or it's like more a system property or a process?
Thanks for the question, Bruno. I think it is really hard to measure connectivity directly. So we don't have, let's say, we have some approaches that are trying to do that. And this is why we are moving towards other ways to do it, right? So the process, so in order to directly manage, assess connectivity in the field or using modeling exercises and so on is pretty tough to do, because what we do is try to get an idea on the processes, but you don't really measure the process itself. What you do measure are fluxes, right? And you infer connectivity of the processes on the measured fluxes, which is not really a direct measurement of the process itself. And the same accounts for the connectivity. And that's why we are trying to come up with some new ideas, mainly related to this network, science-based approaches to get direct measures on the connectivity instead of inferring it from measured data of water fluxes and sediment fluxes. And of course, there is a theory behind it, there are conceptual models behind that that are driving. So first, the framework needs to be there, and then according to the way of thinking these things, you can develop new ways to do so, and new ways to measure it, and also to model it.
Thank you, Ronnie, for the presentation. It was really interesting. I don't study connectivity directly in my research, but it's very much related with the things that I'm studying. And I wonder about the connectivity in floodplains. Like, is it more related to the flow? Like, I guess it's more related to the longitudinal connectivity. And I found some interesting things in my floodplain, my study area, which is in Brazil, Pantanal. It's like the sediment concentration is kind of inversely correlated to the flow. So when the flow is high there, the suspended sediment concentration is very low, and it's not also not related to the rainfall. It's something in between. Because in this region we have like 6 months of rainfall, and then 6 months of low rainfall, and the sediment is in between rainfall and flow, but it's very much inversely correlated. So I just wonder about the connectivity in floodplain. Maybe I could get some ideas.
Floodplains are very complex. So you have a lot of pockets of sediments that are lying around somewhere, and then it really depends, of course, on the availability of the sediments. So in how far they're really drainable, right? Or you have also some effects of sediment exhaustion, right? So maybe a former event has transported or exported a lot of sediment out of the floodplain areas. It still needs some time for sediments to build up again in these areas, right? I'm not sure about the Pantanal. This is a very complex kind of situation, at least according to what you explained to me, right? We need to, or you need to have a look at it in more detail. But yes, it's first of all related, if you only look into the floodplains during a flooding event, to longitudinal connectivity relationships. But of course, when you look, I don't know about the adjacent parts, adjacent to the floodplain. How do the hill slopes, are they hill slopes look like? Or is it completely wetland area? Right? Yeah, it's completely wet. So if it's in the Pantanal, it's most likely like this, exactly. Yeah, there's a complex relationship going on there. But this is longitudinal. Yeah, because you asked about the different kind of spatial domains. But yeah, I don't have a simple answer to that, of course. But we can look at it. So I would be interested to have a look at it. Right.
Thank you.
I have some question. Ronnie, in one of your slides, you presented us, you show some graph where when the connectivity increases, the sensitivity increases also. So for me, it's kind of hard to understand this relationship, especially for large rivers with high discharge, because in my opinion, this kind of river are strongly connected to maybe the outlet of the watershed, and it's very hard to disturb the connectivity of this kind of system. So do you think that this relationship where the connectivity increases or the sensitivity increases with the connectivity can also be applied for these large rivers?
Yes, I think so. Of course, this concept was related or built on a catchment-based thinking, right? If you only look into the river systems themselves, the channel systems, sorry, yeah, which we shouldn't do, in my opinion, this relationship might get a little bit more complicated or fussy. Yeah, I would agree. But on a catchment kind of based way of thinking, the project definitely still makes sense. So this was more related to the thinking of, or the conceptualization of in how far different hill slope parts are connected to the channel. Yeah, which of course makes sense then in the end. So if the hill slope parts are more connected to the channel, the more sensitive these systems are when it comes to disturbance and when it comes to sediment and water input to the river. So this maybe you have to rethink it when only when you only apply it to the channel systems themselves. But this was not the intention behind that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, yeah. I have another one if you want. Okay, ready? Another question is regarding the landslides and connectivity. In one of your slides, you showed that landslides can decrease the connectivity of the landscape. I don't know exactly. But in one of our last papers, we found that the place where landslides occur, after the landslide occurrence, they are strongly connected to the outlet of the basin, because you have no vegetation in that place, and at least the landslides that connected to the fluvial system, we found that they are very connected to the outlet. So you think, what do you think?
So when you, so in my example, I was trying to show the effects of landslide dams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the one was, this was related to landslide dams, and these dams are blocking, let's say, the channels themselves, right?
Yeah.
And of course, increasing the longitudinal connectivity. But of course, you're completely right, but this wasn't the point I was trying to make. So you're completely right. Landslides, the occurrence of landslides, yeah, play a major role when it comes to sediment contribution to the channel, and therefore, of course, it's a huge effect when it comes to increasing the connectivity of the overall system. So I completely agree, but let's say the message was related to the effects of landslide dams on the longitudinal connectivity.
Okay. Okay. Questions? I have a last question about the riparian zone. You showed us also the huge effect of the riparian zone and the buffer strips, and you told us about the type of vegetation. It plays a major role in the sediment retention. And in Brazil, we have a discussion about that, the forestal code. So we need to keep at least 30 meters of riparian zone in Brazil to keep the water quality, something like that, in the river. And you showed us a buffer zone, a buffer strip with 4.5 meters width. So I was wondering, how much of riparian zone, or how wide our buffer need to be to place this role of sedimentation. Okay.
That's a very difficult question, really, because we did a lot of experiments on that. Of course, everybody was asking us, okay, how, let's say the same question, like how wide these riparian buffer strips need to be in order to be capable of retaining a lot of water and sediment.
Yes.
And this is not a simple question to answer. The thing is, first of all, it depends on the size of the contributing area.
Yes.
And it depends, of course, on a lot of factors that are influencing the runoff characteristics along the hill slopes. So the longer the slope is, the steeper the slope is, the larger the contributing area.
The type of the sediment also.
The type of the sediment, soil parameters, and so on and so forth. Land management, a lot of different factors of influence are really driving, let's say, the runoff magnitudes and the size of the magnitude of the precipitation event and stuff like this. And these are factors that needs to be kind of considered when it comes to the calculation of the width of these riparian buffer strips. And there is no simple answer to do that, but it's also not really possible to model all of these areas for different hill slopes in order to come up with a buffer strip width that is appropriate for all of these different locations. So there's no simple answer for that. And the factors are quite obvious because they are limiting the runoff processes and the soil erosion and sediment hills arriving in these riparian zones. So there's no simple answer to that. In this specific case, we had a buffer strip, as you said, of 4.5 meters or so, right? And we had a trapping efficiency of around about 45%. So according to our modeling, what we found in the riparian buffer strips was we collected it, yeah, right, and measured it and measured the volumes of deposited sediment there. So this was kind of around about 50% with 4.5. But it's not that easy. If you double that in saying, okay, if you make it twice as wide, you'll have 100% trapping efficiency. The next event might be more pronounced, more runoff, more erosion, more sediments that are just approaching the parent buffer strips, but they might look completely different, completely overflowing or whatsoever. The wider, the better.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you so much. I have a question about the management watershed basin connectivity. Do you think it's possible defining areas basin, natural solution basin, and have a potential to retention sediment, and defining these areas for protection, these areas and management in this?
Thank you, Marcela. Thank you. Yes, I think so. And this, we already talked a little bit about it when driving in the car, right? So first of all, you have to have an idea on the connectivity relationships in the system and in how far different types of land management or land cover might have an influence on that. And you have different ways to do that. You can do modeling, you can do indices like you did a lot, right, in your own work. Field-based studies, and so on and so forth, in order to discriminate, in order to delineate areas with low connectivity or areas that have a high buffering capacity. And then you could go for different kinds of management strategies in order to protect or even create areas that have these properties. I think this is a very important thing and a very good way to go to when it comes to a holistic way of managing catchment systems, instead of just looking at the river channels themselves and there's a lot of sediment in there, but you have to have a picture of the whole thing, of the whole catchment. And yes, maybe this could be something to create areas with a high retention potential and to protect these areas, let's say, or also on a management basis, on a policy level, that they need to be there and they need to have at least in size and need to be placed here and there in order to prevent these processes and these problems that might occur out of it. So yes.
Yeah, so I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, Masato.
Thank you very much for the nice lecture. You told us a very nice actual and connectivity sciences in geomorphology, especially geomorphology. I'd like to know your opinion, maybe your personal opinion or your European opinion, where this science is going in the future, especially the connectivity science and geomorphology.
Thank you, Masato. I don't know. The question is the question around where it should go, or where I think it will go. I think we need to be very careful because connectivity, also in geomorphology, is there for 15 years, something like this. And we need to come up with new ideas, new methodologies in order to be able to create new knowledge and also new ways to manage the systems. If we don't do so, I think the whole concept will disappear. It's a very sexy thing, to do connectivity science, connectivity, yeah, everything, yeah, nice concepts, nice figures, but we're still lacking, I think, when it comes to the development of new approaches to really assess connectivity instead of doing some workarounds like we already discussed about before with Bruno. Yeah, it's okay to infer connectivity from measured data, which we already do in geomorphology since we're doing it, right? So we have to find new ways to approach connectivity in a more direct way. Otherwise, I think the whole thing will vanish. So I think so. But we're on it. We're trying to do that in order to keep the connectivity alive.
Okay. Questions? No more? No more? So, so thank you very much. Again, Professor Ronald, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Bruno and Marina, they have a gift for you now.
Very nice. I've always wanted to have one.
Maybe we can take a picture. Yeah. Maybe everybody on the stage could be. Yeah.
Is the Poppl Street
Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
What's a bit? What's a bit?
This 1 million.
Quem vai tirar?
Marina,
Where's she going?
no.
Thanks again. It was really a pleasure to talk to all of you. It was nice.
Yeah, we appreciate that one. Yeah.
You weekend see?
Yes.
No, just the first part.
Yeah.
I think the contrast is too easy.
Fleischwurst ist ja wirklich gut Zeit. Das muss sein Fleisch.
No.
I'm so shiny.
Muito obrigado, galera. Yeah, nice. Thank you very much again. Hope you enjoyed it. Very nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Very good. No. It was not good because it was so interesting. Yeah.
No, size.
Size?
Yeah.
Size. Yeah, size.
It's like they
What do you think?
I mean the size. Everything is medium.
Yeah, I think
It's not zero. You're calling me name. Small.
Rins pequeno.
it's small. It's like maybe we represent it. It's like so small.
Why do you use POEPPL in the paper?
Yeah, ich habe Masato also. Because the thing is, nobody knows. What does it mean? I can also do for Poppl, like you say, Poppl. Yeah, Poppl. It's really difficult.
The pronunciation of the L is something like
So R, or it's so hard. No, I remember that because it doesn't work for me.
we had that in Portuguese in the past, but we don't have very much. Nice.
Want to still present that?
I need to stop the. Isso é raro, né?